Hey everyone, it's Brad and Josh here, and we welcome you to We'll Bring the Popcorn, the ultimate film and TV podcast.
On today's show, we're going to be reviewing the new film Tron Ares, as well as the new film Roofman.
So we're not too far away from Predator Badlands coming out, but we got word that it's going to be PG-13, which is going to be the very first one in the series to have that rating. Every other one has been rated R, even Prey that Dan did before was rated R. Now, that one came out on streaming. It's been since 2018 since we've had a Predator film in theaters. And we're getting a re-release of Prey before Predator Badlands, so you can finally see that one in theaters. But it's really interesting to see that they're going PG-13 with it. Now, they mainly said that's because there's no human red blood in the film. You're dealing with android synths, predators, because we've got the Yutani Wayland connection in there. We have mostly predators and alien creatures and stuff, and it's going to be really interesting to see if that helps the film or if it hurts the film, because fans of the series are going to be looking for that rated R for the gruesome violence and everything else, and a PG-13 does open it up for a bigger audience, but it doesn't exactly mean that more people are going to go and see the film.
Yeah, it's definitely a risk to take. Like, you're traditionally making these rated R, and it does appeal to like a more of a niche audience, I would say. I think the most successful one was the last one. It made like $170 million at the box office. So these aren't like these aren't $1 billion movies usually, but I wonder if that is a ploy to try to bring in more people if they make it, PG-13 without as much like gruesome violence to it, but trying to be, action-packed and still violent, but kind of with that caveat that it's not going to be the bloody mess that you're used to when you come to see like a Alien or a Predator type movie or whatever. But it's definitely an interesting choice because it's a good gamble to take. We'll see if it pays off for them, but hardcore fans of these films are probably going to feel a type of way about it. It's already been a little bit parodied because of the overall aesthetic of the Predator itself, especially without the mask, and a lot of that was being parodied online, and people are already feeling a different type of way about that, so wondering if that's going to have any impact on the film. The trailers that we've seen so far have been pretty solid trailers. Like, I'm excited to see the movie, but I wonder how much of that niche audience is going to be turned off by the fact that it's not going to be a kind of a more bloody, violent film that we're kind of used to from the Predator franchise, as opposed to, what's probably a more clean but still action-heavy version of what we've seen, given previous films and TV shows that we've gotten of it.
Yeah, so we got the final trailer released, and it's got a ton of action. They showed a lot of stuff, but it's with bigger alien creatures that we really haven't seen before in the universe. The director did talk about that, whether it's true or not, that we're probably not going to see a xenomorph in here, even though we got the Yutani connection and stuff in there, that we're not bringing the xenomorphs and that stuff like that. There's a reason why Yutani and the synths and stuff like that play, or the synths or cyborgs play a role in this, that it's still going to be a heavily Predator film. It's completely different from anything we've seen before. Everything before this has always been about the Predator showing up in location and stalking humans and, all that. And this is pretty much taking place on this world where the Predators are trying to show who they are and kill these creatures and kill these unkillable creatures that they think. So it's going to be, I think, tonally, visually, like everything is going to be quite different from what we've seen from the Predator franchise before.
Yeah, it's definitely a risk that they're taking with this, and I'm excited to check it out and see what's going to happen with it. Time will tell if it's commercially successful or not, just dropping it from R to PG-13, but we're in such a weird time in movies anyway. Like, things you think are going to do extremely well at the box office don't for whatever reason. So this is another one that we'll have to wait and see, what happens with it. But I'm hopeful that this does commercially well, because I'm a fan of the Predator movies, always have been, and this one is definitely a shift from what we're used to, but we'll see if it pays off for him.
Yeah, like $170 million isn't a huge mark to try to the best in the franchise, but with how things have been, like, you can go back in our last episode to see what we thought of the Smashing Machine, but it has bombed hugely. Like, it had around a $50 million budget, and it doesn't look like it's going to get anywhere close to that. It's done really poorly. There's been several that have gotten good buzz, and you would think were going to do well, and they were well under where they thought they were going to be. They're even talking about now that Superman overall wasn't really profitable for DC, even though there was a really good reaction and it made around 600 million. But it just, the films are not performing like they think they are, while others are being runaway hits with smaller budgets and everything else. So yeah, it's going to be real interesting to see if it can at least hit the 100 million mark and see if it goes anywhere else from there.
Right, and time will tell. It's a weird time in the movie industry right now. Like we've talked last week about films trying to slash budgets and what have you, and we'll get into more of that a little bit later. But I definitely want to pivot us now into talking about a film that is one of my sleeper favorite movies ever, is Heat. Heat was so good, made back in the day with Val Kilmer, Al Pacino. There's talks of a potential sequel coming out now. You have got Michael Mann putting out a basically follow-up sequel slash prequel. It's kind of weird how he wrote the book, but a follow-up to it just a few years ago. But it feels like we're moving forward with another Heat film. Now, they're talking about having, actors like Leonardo DiCaprio, Adam Driver, Bradley Cooper, Austin Butler, a bunch of those guys that are kind of like the forefront of these types of films, like being penned for the movie. But I'm very interested to see what they do if they do decide to go forward with the sequel, because like I said, Heat is one of my sleeper favorite movies. Like, it's so much fun. It's such a good, well-made movie. And I'm really interested to see what they do with the follow-up.
Yeah, I mean, that was put out in 1995, and the book was put out in 2022, so you've got quite a gap between there. Of course, we lost Val Kilmer earlier this year, which his character was a big part of the book, so it's going to be interesting to see if they recast and continue that story, or if they leave that bit out as honor of him or something, because it's going to be hard that you go back and revisit, like, pretty much every role that Val Kilmer did, he owned it 100%. It's hard to really go back to any of his roles and say, well, we're just going to recast it because we want to do this movie 30 years later. That it's going to be really interesting to see what they do there. But yeah, it's like, it's a prequel and a sequel. It's set across multiple cities in the U.S. It goes to South America. It's a pretty big, vast book that he did on it. But they're saying there's a lot of trouble with the budget. So this was originally with Warner Brothers, but they backed out because they said it was too big of a financial risk for them. They allowed Michael Mann in August to look for new studios, and Amazon's picked it up now, which they have an overabundance of money to spend now. But Michael Mann is kind of known for going over budget. He asked for $230 million for it. And as you kind of alluded to last week, we talked about how they're trying to get the last Fast and Furious film under $200 million, and he's asking for $230 million, is known for going over budget. So it's kind of, well, Heat 2 is going to cost more than Fast and Furious 11. That's kind of wild to me.
Yeah, that's insane given, what goes into making those movies versus what goes into making like this action type, heisty type, film like, Heat 2 would be. But I'm excited for the potential of it. Like I said, that original Heat film is just so good. If you haven't seen it, it is a sleeper hit. Like, it is really, really, really good.
And star-studded.
It's stacked. It's like a stacked cast. When you have the likes of Val Kilmer, Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, like all of those guys starring in this film, like big names in a movie, and there's so many more that, it's one of those films that you go back now and watch and you go, oh, I know that guy. Oh, I know that guy. Oh, I remember where I've seen it. You literally spend half the movie picking out people that you're like, oh, I recognize him from this, or I recognize him from this. Like, phenomenal movie, well made, just such an epic, epic film. And the fact that it's getting a sequel, I'm excited to see what happens, because there's a lot of guys now that could play in those types of roles that I could think could really take up the mantle and make a really, really solid second film.
Do we Glenn Powell taking over the Val Kilmer role?
Might as well. He's taking over everything else. He's getting his hands on a little bit of everything. Put him in there. He's trying to take my boy Charlie Cox's role in the Claire Obscure movie. How dare you? Don't do it. But he's trying to be in everything else. Let's just put him in there too.
I want to move us on to the latest Game of Thrones show that we've been waiting for a while now. So it's A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. We finally got quite a bit of updates on it and the first trailer. So this is going to premiere January 18th, 2026. It's 6 episodes. Apparently the episodes are about 30 minutes each. So when you go back that it was announced in 2021 and we're getting in 2026, it's 5 years to get 3 hours worth of content. Hopefully it's worth it, but they did give us some more details on the story. Sir Duncan the Tall, his companion Egg. It's much more grounded, medieval knight type of show. There's not going to be any dragons. It takes place 50 years after the last dragon passed, but it's also like 100 years in between stuff. So you got 100 years after House of the Dragon, 100 years before Game of Thrones. So it's right in kind of that mix as the Targaryens are kind of losing their control of the people, and they're kind of heading into the obscurity that we know all about in Game of Thrones and everything. But I'm really curious to see what they do with this. They say it's something that you should expect it to be quite a bit different from Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, that they're not focusing on the lords and ladies, the kings and queens and stuff. It's more about the knights and the peasants and this hedge knight that we're going to follow on this journey.
Yeah, it's an interesting story that they're going to go here, because there is so much more of this Westeros world that, could be explored, and we're finally getting a little bit of that here. And it feels like it's been so long since we've heard about this show, and now it's finally coming out, but we're only getting 6 episodes and they're 30 minutes each. Like, Game of Thrones is notorious for taking forever in between seasons. Like, it's, by the time the new House of the Dragon season comes out, it'll have been over 3 years since we've had, a season of House of the Dragon even. Like, they're notorious for taking their time, but to wait this long, and it took them roughly 3 to 4 months to film this show for basically 3 hours worth of episodes, is kind of, you better hit it out of the park if you're taking that long to do it. Like, we're all for taking our time to get the story right and, take care and do what you need to do for the show. But if this show isn't good, the Game of Thrones property could be in a lot of trouble, because, the trailer when it came out looks awesome, looks great. I'm excited for it. It's got a lot of people who love Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon excited for what's to come, but it better deliver on the show, because if it doesn't, that's a big problem when you're taking that long to put something out, and this is what we get. It better be worth the wait.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of discussion lately about how long it takes in between seasons. You had the Duffer Brothers, who did Stranger Things, talking about how they would love to do more series and stuff where there is kind of a long break in between seasons, and I think they kind of missed the mark, and the point of that, most people talk about that it's taking too long. You wait too long in between seasons, if it takes you 15 years to do 5 seasons, which pretty much Stranger Things has done, your kids are adults now, and you have a pretty big change in everything. And you have to just wonder if the audience can stay fully enveloped into the world that you've created if you're taking 2, 3, 4, 5 years in between. Like I said, this was announced in 2021. It's not coming out till 2026. So overall 5 years to develop it. And if we follow the track of House of the Dragon, Game of Thrones, is it going to be 2 to 3 years before we get the second one? Like, if seasons are starting to get farther and farther apart, I see that as a problem, not a good thing. Like, the last season of Game of Thrones took a long time to get out in between these House of the Dragons. This one, like, it's not a good thing that it's taking longer, because you can start getting bored. You can start feeling, oh, I used to watch that show 3 years ago. What happened to it? Where'd it go? I thought it went off the air. Like, you can have a lot of bad mixed reactions. Not only just, you could lose actors. The actors may need to move on to other jobs because they can't wait 3 years in between to do this stuff. Like, it feels like something needs to happen and be done about it taking that long for these TV shows to get done.
Sure, and you got to also take into account that people's tastes change. Like you said, you kind of summed it up a minute ago where you said, like, people could have that feeling of, I used to watch that show, I forgot it was on, but they may not be into those types of shows anymore. Like, there's definitely some concern with that. Like, there's definitely fads and phases where certain topics and shows are popular. The Walking Dead is a great example of that. Like, it lasted so long, it kind of outlived its own phase. Mm-hmm. Like, people were obsessed with zombies for several years, and then, you could talk about what creatively swayed it, but also interest in those types of things kind of waned a little bit, and the viewership fell off a cliff for the show. Like, yep. You got to worry about, like, I'm all for the creative process doing its thing, but if it's taking that long, you do run the risk of losing your core audience, because interest in it could wane over time, and that's something you got to be concerned about. There are a few things that could potentially be bulletproof in that. Like, I imagine when you mentioned Stranger Things, it feels like it's been forever since season 4 of Stranger Things, but now when season 5 drops here in a little over a month, by the way, can't believe it's finally here, but that's going to be huge and humongous and explode for Netflix. So there's a few things that are bulletproof, but it's a very big risk. Like, is the quality of the show, like, it's something I'm concerned with. Does it take a hit because it took too long?
Yep.
You know what I mean? And it's a very valid concern for people to have.
Yeah, while we're looking at like the Harry Potter series, other than people questioning, does it even really need to happen? You know, you're dealing with a majority cast of kids. If they decide to take too long in between seasons, you might have Harry with a full beard before he's in like his third year of Hogwarts if they take too long. Like, a lot of these, and like going back to, you know, this show, Egg is a child. If you take too long in between it, he's going to be an adult before you get to the story. You know, these are based off of novella, so they're not the meatiest stories, or some of the most popular ones that he's done outside of the main Game of Thrones. But if you take too long, especially when you have main actors being children, they're grown adults by the time you finish it. And again, we have that with Stranger Things. They're showing up to the premieres with full beards and married and kids and everything else when they're supposed to be still teenagers in the show.
Right. It's definitely a risk to take, but we'll see if it pays off for him. I want to pivot us now to a very interesting topic because, you know, with the release of Snow White this past earlier this year, there was a lot of talk about Disney not wanting to move forward with any more live action properties, kind of take a break for a while, just due to how poorly Snow White was received by people, did not do commercially well. It definitely caused them to pause and take a step back and really look at doing live action anymore at that point. But now we're getting word that the Tangled project that was shelved is back on for development. And we definitely got some interesting casting news around that film.
Yeah, potentially we have Scarlett Johansson being eyed to play Mother Gothel, which I'm mixed on. She can sing, she can act. I enjoy her as an actress and stuff, but me and my wife have talked about this a lot. Like, out of all the Disney villains, Mother Gothel is one of the nastiest to us, especially as parents. Like, we see this woman who kidnapped a child and won't let her see the outside world because of her selfishness, that her hair keeps her youthful, and she's gaslighting and doing all that. She's a horrible human being. Like, Scarlett's played some darker characters and mean characters and other things like that, but I don't know if I fully see her encompassing this kind of nasty woman that is Mother Gothel. Like, fans far and away instantly said when they were doing live action, like Catherine Hahn, like, you see Agatha, that's Mother Gothel in a way. Like, she could do it really well. You could even get the, you know, original voice is Donna Murphy. She looks like her. Her age is right in the range and everything else well. So you could either go on Catherine Hahn or get, you know, Donna Murphy back, but you go on Scarlett Johansson, and it's I'm not going to hate it, but I don't know if I could see and picture, because she's also small in stature, and two, to see her as Mother Gothel.
Yeah, you run the potential of having another Gal Gadot situation, right? Where she's not normally playing a type of character like that, and then she tries to play the evil queen or the wicked stepmother, or in this case, Mother Gothel for Scarlett Johansson. You run a very real risk of not being believable in a role like that, and that's not to say that you can't pull it off, because we all know Scarlett Johansson's a phenomenal actress, but it's definitely one that's hard to see booking-wise. Now, there's been talk of who's going to actually play Rapunzel, and a lot of people are of the belief that McKenna Grace, who notoriously broke through with the Ghostbusters reboots, she's been on several other films here recently as well, including one that's coming up called Regretting You. And there's talk of potentially her co-star in that, Mason Thames, who played Hiccup in, the How to Train Your Dragon reboot, could be a good Flynn Rider for that film. So there's a little bit of casting speculation coming together very quickly for that film, but it'll be interesting to see where Disney lands on this, because I'm still on the fence of them putting a pause on this live action stuff, only to not even a year later come back and
6
say,
months later.
not even a full year, just coming back and saying, oh, we're back at it, and Tangled's back on and it's a go. Like, what is Disney doing? Like, do they think we were just going to forget about Snow White? Because it's not the case. Yeah,
because you don't know if they pause to reevaluate and see how they can improve the live actions, because most of them have been kind of mediocre. Like, we gave Snow White a little bit higher review than most other people did. It still had so many problems and faults and stuff with it, and Gal Gadot was very miscast in that as well. But we don't know if this was a pause to try to reevaluate and go over scripts and see if things, because you still got the director of The Greatest Showman is still supposed to be directing and stuff as well, which that was such a fantastic
great movie,
musical and everything else, that you have hopes because of that. But you wonder if they went back and looked at anything, or if this was just like, oh, we're gonna say we're shelving all of our live action until people forget that Snow White existed and was put out, and we'll just go right back and do the exact same thing. Because I mean, I enjoyed The Little Mermaid, and the Beauty and the Beast was okay, but none of the live action came even close to capturing the heart, the magic, the soul that those animated classics had. But it's also for our generation. We grew up on those animated films. You've got a lot of kids who are growing up now. Maybe they've seen the animated films, but they may be coming into this story from the live actions, and they still love it and enjoy it, while us who grew up on the animated classics are yelling at clouds because they didn't do it right. But it does feel, and the general consensus is, that they haven't been able to recapture that magic that they've had in animation.
Yeah, it's hard to do. I would argue that Beauty and the Beast is one of the better examples of that. The Aladdin live action, I enjoyed that, despite the fact of how people feel of Will Smith versus Robin Williams.
So
it's not
hard.
a fair. It's not a fair comparison to make, because, Robin Williams is so iconic in that role. You couldn't have put anyone else in that role, and anybody would have felt great about it. But I thought Will Smith did a fine job in that film as well.
It was never going to be even remotely close to Robin, because you can't. Like, he was a once-in-a-lifetime type of genius with his timing and his comedy and his voice and his antics. Like, there was no way anyone was ever going to measure up to him.
Yeah, and it's hard to find anything that'll duplicate the success of the live-action, quote-unquote live-action Lion King that was made, that was, that did gangbusters for them. Mm-hmm. People can argue how good the film was or wasn't, but it commercially was very, very successful. Mm-hmm. I think they're still chasing that golden carrot, perhaps, but yeah, it's interesting to see. I want to see who they get in the film. Is it Scarlett Johansson? Is it someone else? Like
Pedro Pascal is Mother Gothel.
Might as well just get Glenn Powell and Pedro Pascal and put them in everything.
Glenn Powell is Rapunzel.
Right, yeah.
Pedro is Mother Gothel.
I believe it.
So
let's make it
100 million right there.
Why not? Easy money. Easy money.
That'd be a lot. I mean, you wonder if we're going to see any stars like that. I mean, we've had some pretty big stars coming into these remakes and stuff, but yeah, it hasn't had the charm, hasn't had the heart. Hopefully, my kids love Tangled, but very famously, if Mandy Moore and Zachary Levi really carried that with their voices and their performances and stuff. And you got to see if someone else can come in and step in and kind of make the songs their own, when you have someone who sings as kind of beautifully as Mandy Moore did these songs, and then made it her songs, as the Tarzan soundtrack is Phil Collins' soundtrack and everything. Like, it's going to be hard to have someone step in, because that is one of the more bigger modern soundtracks with Tangled, because it's just Mandy Moore did such a fantastic job with those original songs.
It's hard to recreate that magic when Disney songs are done so well. Mm-hmm. To do them any different it's a hard thing for people to digest a lot of times, and fair, because Disney animation is notorious for having phenomenal music, and the soundtracks of these movies are just so good that it's hard for anything to touch it. And when they try to do it with somebody else, a lot of people have very strong opinions on it, right, wrong, or indifferent.
I want them to do a live-action Tarzan based off of the animated, and just have on the beach the guy who looks like Phil Collins with a piano on fire. It's just a tribute to him, because that's still one of the most... Doesn't mean his age has caused him to stop doing music and everything else, so... if they ever do anything with that, which we've had plenty of live action Tarzans, and as we know, all of these Disney stories are based off of old tales that are much darker and much more serious than they actually went on. But yeah, I'll hold out hope that Tangled is good for my girls, because I know how much they love the animated film. But you do wonder, just, are they missing again? Like, I love Scarlett. I don't know if that's Mother Gothel to me.
Time's gonna tell.
So we also have New York Comic Con going on this weekend, and we've got a lot of kind of news that's come out of it, so we're going to do some quick hits on the stories there. The first one up is that they delayed Wonder Man. So this is a comic character that I really don't know that much about. We did get the first trailer, which, it revolved around them casting for Wonder Man in this remake film. So it's a film within a show, and you do have, some characters from the MCU have shown up in that trailer to kind of tie it all together. But it looks interesting, but I have to admit, I don't know anything about it. It was supposed to be out in December. It was just delayed a month, but it's going to be interesting to see how people take to this more obscure character.
Yeah, and Marvel's not afraid of taking some of those risks when it comes to obscure franchises. It's easy to constantly point to Guardians of the Galaxy, who were not the most popular group of comic book characters, and it became a multi-billion-dollar franchise. Not expecting that out of Wonder Man by any means, but I'm excited to check it out. The trailer looks fun. It feels very meta, which is a potential fun take on a comic book story. So I'm excited to check that one out when we finally get it in January. Don't know why they delayed it a month. It seems kind of silly, but maybe they're trying to get past some of the stuff that's probably going to overshadow it in the winter months, especially when Disney has a multi-billion-dollar franchise like Avatar coming out towards the end of the year that may overshadow it a little bit. And then obviously you got stuff like Stranger Things wrapping up theirs. It's going to potentially take some eyeballs away from it too. So maybe there's some strategy there, but we'll see.
Yeah, especially Stranger Things is 3 parts. So it's got 3 different releases between November and the end of December. Yeah, both of those could definitely have played a part. But one that we were kind of upset about that it didn't come out, Mortal Kombat 2 was set to release this month. That it was actually this week or next week, somewhere around there. It was, but we were supposed to be watching it here soon. It got delayed till May, and we talked about it in an episode that we were hoping that's not based on quality, that they don't have any hope. But if they're moving to the summer, it seems like, well, that's a pretty big summer next year to be putting Mortal Kombat in. They've already greenlit Mortal Kombat 3 and have started, early production on it. So more signs pointing that they were actually happy with it because before anybody's even seen it, they have moved on with a third.
That gives me more hope about the second film. We've heard early screen testings were phenomenal and well received, and we were disappointed when they announced that they moved it because I really wanted to be watching that film right now, and I was excited for it coming up. I'm still excited for it coming out in May, but it was definitely a bummer that it was pushed out like almost 7 months to put it more in line with the summer release. Hopefully it does well. Love the first one. I'm excited for the second one, especially with the addition of, Carl Urban in here, who you could put him in almost anything and I'd enjoy him.
Collecting roles now.
I love it. He's in so many different universes that he's just collecting all of the Nerd Kingdom Infinity Gauntlet stones, and he's just doing such a phenomenal job. But
Dread and Thor and
Star Trek
and Mortal Kombat, and he's just been in, you got The Boys and a different superhero type of show. Like he's just collected, like you said, the Nerd Infinity Stones of roles to be in, and all of them. He's been fun and great. Like there's been people clamoring for more of him as Dread after that reboot, but
the MCU.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Speaking of the MCU, we got word on Vision Quest. So this was kind of quietly filmed. Like most MCU shows or projects, we hear quite a bit about, and we try to avoid some of the spoilers and stuff with it. But literally almost nothing came out of Vision Quest. It's done. It's out in 2026. But we got word that James Spader will return as Ultron, not only voicing him, but he's going to play a human version of him. And we also have James Darcy, who played Jarvis in Agent of Carter. He's going to have a role on the show as well. So it's really revolving around Vision having, because we left at the end of WandaVision, he's White Vision now, but he has the memories, but he doesn't have connections to that. And this show is kind of exploring how he has all these memories of things that happened, but he doesn't have any connection to it to see how he handles being this version of Vision that just really doesn't care about what has happened. And I'm really curious to see how they approach and do that show, especially bringing James back and bringing, actually 2 Jameses back and seeing how that goes.
Getting all the James here in Vision Quest. I'm glad that they kind of quietly got this done because I think everybody's been distracted by Spider-Man and Avengers news, a lot of it. And then some of the other stuff that we're going to talk about here as well, because there's plenty of Marvel stuff that's come out of this. They had a big presence at New York Comic Con. We're kind of the central focus of it as far as like mainstream news and things that broke. It was very like almost San Diego Comic-Con, probably equivalent level of participation in the New York Comic-Con that we typically would get from San Diego. And, I know some of this was due to reportedly Paul Bettany's last role that he had signed on for his original Marvel contract was WandaVision, and they were planning to do more stuff, but they, from what I heard, wasn't under contract to do anything beyond that. So I know they potentially had to rework a deal for Paul Bettany to come back as Vision. Stoked for that. Stoked that we're finally getting the show. I'm excited for a trailer for it when it finally gets released to the public. I want to see what this show looks like. And you got some pretty solid people here, a part of this show. And at some point Elizabeth Olsen's got to make some kind of appearance in the show as well, because obviously you can't have Vision without some kind of Wanda presence, even if he's on this solo journey to find himself here. Like it's going to be real interesting to see what they do with it.
Even if it's like a memory that they really haven't shown in live action before, something just to have her back and play something new where it's maybe a touching moment or something like that. She's got to have something to do with Vision Quest here.
Has to. You have to have her in there.
I know one show that we've talked about a ton that Josh is a huge fan of, Daredevil Born Again. We are getting season 2 in March. It confirmed it is sticking with and staying in March 2026. But this is one we're not going to touch on a ton because they've just gone out with full spoilers. There's images, there's footage that was shown. It showed a lot of spoilery stuff for season 2, which Josh doesn't want to know about. I've seen it. He hasn't. I'm trying not to spoil, but there's some pretty big items out here for Daredevil Born Again season 2 and 3. 3 is officially greenlit. They're getting the writers' room together. They're going to start putting that story together for, March 2027, more than likely to get that. So they're going to film that, next year. But there's a lot of stuff that's come out, and kind of surprising how much they've already spoiled of the season when we still have 6 months to go before we see it.
We just can't have nice things anymore, and that bothers me so much. I love the show. I want to be surprised. Unfortunately, I did have one major item, which I'm not going to spoil in here. If you're like me and are trying to avoid spoilers for the show, there was one very major spoiler. It just happened to pop up in the first thing I opened on my social media feed, and I'm like, why can't we just surprise things? There's things that we have both speculated on this show. If you go back in archives and talk about what we feel could potentially be in store for Daredevil in season 2, makes a lot of sense, and it looks like it's going to be happening. I'm happy about that, but for the love of God, can we keep some things a secret on a show? Like, do you have to spoil the entire show before it comes out? Because it takes away some of the fun and the enjoyment of it. Like, obviously, I'm gonna see the trailer for it, and it's probably gonna spoil a bunch of things, but I'm just trying to delay that as much as possible because I really want to enjoy the show. I love the character Daredevil so much. I've been very open about that on this show, and I'm excited for season 2. The biggest news for me, season 3 is official and it's greenlit. So excited that we're not stopping.
Especially after Charlie had one interview, threw up like, oh yeah, in our final season of like, wait, what's this? Season 2 is the final season of it? And like, oh, I just meant this last season. And then he had to stumble and go, and Vincent D'Onofrio came out trying to say, oh, he didn't mean it that way. He did this and that. And then they just had to come out. Yeah, season 3 is happening.
Thank God. I am so excited that this show's going to continue. I love Daredevil so much. And
now, was that an actual stumble, or was that Charlie like, hey, I'm going to screw some things up here for you, so you got to tell everybody and tell us, the actors, right now, or are we getting another one?
Right. Hey, force their hand. I'm all for it, but very excited about season 2 not being the end of it because I want this show to go on for a lot longer. Charlie Cox, I want him to be the Hugh Jackman of the MCU where he plays Daredevil until he's 90. Please. I love Charlie Cox in that role. Give me Daredevil until he's 90. I'm here for all of it.
Well, speaking of playing Daredevil till he's 90, we did get confirmation that Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man will be out. Season 2 will be out in fall 2026. It looks like Charlie Cox will be returning as Daredevil.
That's awesome.
In there, he wore his black suit in the first season. Looks like he's going to go back to his red suit in season 2. But we also finally got confirmation that X-Men 97 season 2 will be out in the summer of 2026. We've been waiting for that for 2 years now to get that after the amazingly brilliant first reboot season that they did. And they're like, oh, it's going to be a couple years away before we get it. But the good news is season 3 is already in production being made. So hopefully that means a 2027 release date for season 3, and then we don't have to wait a couple more years, like as we talked about with Game of Thrones and everything. Making people wait 2, 3, 4 years for stuff, it's not good.
It sucks, but it's also hopefully worth the wait at that point. I'm so excited for another season of X-Men 97. I've gone back and rewatched it again, and it's still so freaking good. Like, it's still so well done. Go check out X-Men 97. It is a phenomenal animated series, and one that is definitely worth your time in the watch. It was so good.
Yeah, the Remember It Gambit episode was so just ingrained in my memory now after that. Like, it was so well done because it aged the show with the audience of, we grew up with it. Was for us, and now it's like, oh, hey, it's for us again here, and let's watch it and have so much fun with it. But such, plus because of that 90s era, that the suits and stuff they did, and the X-Men era there, like, that's one of the most popular designs of costumes for superheroes probably nearly ever, because they were so iconic, from Cyclops' look to Wolverine's look to everything else. And to have that back in, much better, higher definition, animation and stuff was just fantastic to see. And yeah, I cannot wait for season 2.
Yeah, they were all distinguishable. Each character had their own unique look, and that's what stood out. You still see those type of cosplays when you go to these conventions and these anime conventions, and you see people in these costumes still, and it's such a unique identifier for stuff that's just stood the test of time for over 30 years now. Like, it's phenomenal. I love that show so much. I'm excited for season 2 and season 3 now that they're working on it. And hopefully, like you said, it doesn't take until 2028 or 2029 to get that 3rd season, because they're already working on it. So hopefully just a small year break in between, and I couldn't be more ready for that show to come out.
Yeah, we're also holding out hope that with Doomsday or Secret Wars that they show a little love to those costumes, maybe with the Fox people, to be able to put them in, the 90s classic costumes. They were black and gold leather. Like, that wasn't the right choice. And they poke fun at it already. So maybe if, we've already got confirmed many of the X-Men are coming back from the Fox universe to kind of close out everything. Please let the rumors and everything else be true that they're going 90s full-on style with their costumes for it.
That would be awesome. I'm looking forward to that so much. But now I want to pivot us into our first film review of the week. We have Tron Ares. So this is the follow-on to Tron Legacy that came out over a decade ago now. Like, it's been a long time since we've visited this Tron universe. And here, this takes place once again in this futuristic world. You've got the Dillinger Company, who is kind of the prime focus of this film. They have their own grid. Embedded into that grid is a character known as Ares, who's kind of like Dillinger's secret weapon kind of thing, to be this perfect soldier that could be used for futuristic battles and military, where it's very interesting how they put all this together, where you can use what's called the permanence code to help bring these characters to life in the real world with laser, like some wild laser 3D printing, making them real and making them evaluate. But it does come with a little bit of a caveat, a little light spoilers here, but these characters can only last 28, 29 minutes in the real world. Minutes. So it's very, very limited time, but you can keep recreating them over and over again, and it kind of just takes off from there. But I gotta say, I was hoping going into this film that we were going to expect bare minimum out of the film, visually phenomenal, along with incredible music that's set to, Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails is making the music in this film. And I gotta say, on that end, bare minimum, it did not disappoint, because visually the effects in this film were incredible, and the music was phenomenal as well.
Yeah, visually it was stunning. It looked incredible. They made, they actually made the light cycles. They made drivable versions of it because they wanted to attach cameras and make it feel more visceral and real, that instead of, it's heavy on CG with stuff, but compared to Tron Legacy, which notably had, younger faces put on characters and other stuff that looked kind of rough, like this visually looked stunning. The sound was great. Yeah, Nine Inch Nails did a great job. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross did a great job doing the soundtrack to it that fit the Tron world, a little mix of what Daft Punk did with Legacy, along with their own sound and stuff with it. It does fail a little bit with the story, because it was 21 years between Tron and Tron Legacy. And Tron Legacy revolved around Flint's son, Sam, and trying to take back over Incom and getting put in the grid and finding what happened to his father. And, that ended with him and Cora getting out. And then this one revolves around them trying to bring characters out, but they can only last. So there's so much that they kind of contradict that Tron Legacy did. Plus, we also barely get, and this is a light spoiler as well, we barely get anything about Sam and Cora in this. Like, there's some breadcrumbs and some ties that I'm not going to fully spoil on that, but it just kind of, it's a third film, but it's kind of a reboot, but it's kind of not, and it pays a lot of homage to stuff that came before, but it kind of it started off decently strong because, as you said, you got Dillinger System, they have their own grid, they're wanting to bring everything from the grid in the real world for military, to sell it to countries, to sell it to companies, while Incom, who have a new CEO who's actually looking for that permanence to do right. So you have good and evil. You're pretty cut and dry, good and evil. Dillinger's evil, Incom's good.
Yeah, very clear line.
But it tries to involve Flynn in it quite a bit. And I think it fails a good amount of what it tries to do with still including Jeff Bridges' Flynn and bringing that world in, because most of what it doesn't really make sense to the other two Tron films.
Yeah, it definitely feels like its own kind of standalone while paying a little bit of homage to what's come before it. You don't get a ton of Kevin Flynn in this film. Jeff Bridges has a very brief appearance in the movie as kind of a guide to Jared Leto's Ares character. Jared Leto is very much at the forefront of this film for a good chunk of it. He kind of, in a lot of ways, carries the film good, wrong, bad, and different, however you feel about that. Greta Lee is Eve, the CEO of Incom, who is also one of the central characters of this film. She does a good job with what she's given in this movie, and I think she's kind of a bright spot in this film, who is trying to pay homage to her sister, who was co-CEO of the company, who had unfortunately passed, and trying to honor her memory, because she plays kind of this jaded CEO while coming back into the fold a little bit more to kind of, it's kind of flimsy, right? So it's kind of like doing this to kind of honor her sister, to do some of these altruistic things that she had wanted to do, and getting her hands on the permanence code first before, the Dillinger Company can catch them. Give a little bit of love as well to Evan Peters, who plays Julian Dillinger, the main villain in this film, who's the head of the Dillinger Company, and he's a bad guy who's doesn't think he's a bad guy necessarily.
Which none of them do.
They never do, but he's very obvious, like, I'm fine, I'm doing this because this is what I'm supposed to do as the head of this company. And then he slowly starts making these evil decisions, and you see him kind of eventually fully leaning into it, especially by the end of the film. And there's some interesting things with that I won't spoil, that kind of sets up for a potential second another Tron film, because they definitely leave this a little bit open-ended with where they're going with the potential ones, especially with the mid-credits scene. Stick around, there is a mid-credit scene. There's not an end-credit scene in this film, but there's an early to mid-credit stinger that kind of teases what's potentially to come, which is a little intriguing. I kind of want to talk to you offline about that, because we both know what it is, but definitely some interesting things in this film. The action on it is solid. There's good fighting in it, good action sequences. I still got to say, though, visually, it's the most impressive Tron film that we've seen so far, because there is so much more advancements in CGI and technology that they use a lot of in this film. And I want you to talk about your experience going to see this, because you got to have a little bit of a difference in viewing experience from me. I got to see it in your standard XD screening, which was phenomenal. The sound is amazing in those types of theaters, but you had just a little bit slightly different experience than I did. And I kind of want you to talk about your experience with that.
Yeah, I took my oldest to see it, and we went to Cinemark in XD, but we did the D-Box motion seats and in 3D. So not only were we tilting and rumbling and moving around, we had it in 3D, and I say that was probably the best kind of spectacle viewing that I've had, of that engrossing of, all right, yeah, it's rumbling, it's moving, as they're going through the opening sequence where they're kind of weaving through news stories within the grid and stuff, we're floating around, and with the 3D causing everything to pop more. I would highly recommend watching it in that way because it was so kind of immersive. It made the film feel so much better and different to me that I was having so much fun because it was just the differences in the rumbles and the movements along with the 3D making those beautiful visuals really pop on screen. Like it was a really fun experience to do it in that way. Now, this is not something typical that everyone can do all the time. It was like $20 a ticket to do something like that, which that price needs to go down. Like I get the technology's not cheap. They've got a couple rows of it there, but that's something that would be really fun if it was more accessible for more people, because if you're going with a group, like I said, it cost me and my daughter over $40 for just the two of us to go for tickets for that. It was worth it in the end, but it's not something you can do over and over again just because of how costly it is. But I had a great time doing it. Like it felt like I was more immersed and in what was going on with the visuals, at least in there. The story didn't grip and grab you as much as you would hope, but the visuals in that way was just so good, and the action just got you in it because you're feeling every bump and movement, and you're spinning out with the light cycles and everything else. Like it was such a fun experience.
Yeah, that's fun. I did get to go see this film before you did, and I recall sitting there in the theater watching it, and I was like, man, they're gonna have a lot of fun if those seats are set up and done right. Like it's gonna be a lot of fun. Like I'm not the biggest fan of 3D films. I typically avoid them when they're unless there's no option otherwise for viewing experiences. 3D doesn't do a ton for me, but I was sitting there watching that and was going, they're going to have an absolute blast watching this movie, because this film feels the most, I would say the most suited for a 3D motion seat type format in a film I can remember in a long, long time. There's plenty of movies with like moving seat potential, at least, that don't necessarily have to have the 3D aspect of it. I know you and I talked about it, like how we wish we had those seats available to us when F1 came out. Like that would have been a fun film to see with the motion seats and everything. Obviously for the driving aspect, and you know, it takes me back to the days of our amusement park up here, Kings Island, having the Days of Thunder ride with the motion seats and how fun that was always. But this film felt the most suited for that I can remember in a long time, being one that would be worth that investment in that time. And I'm glad you guys had that experience, because it looked like it would have been a lot of fun. And I'm glad you guys got to do that.
Yeah, it's kind of the perfect film if you need something just to highlight that type of experience. This is kind of the perfect film for that. Like, and I do want to go a little bit more into the story. We're not going to go too spoiler stuff, but I just got to talk about the inclusion of everything within. Like, I know some people are going to be disappointed because the main part of this story in movie is about bringing the grid into the real world. So most of the film takes place in the real world. You get very kind of little of the grid, and you do get some throwbacks to other grids and stuff, but the changes they made, even though they were kind of fun to see the original grid and other stuff, it made no sense to the overall story that they were trying to tell, because like I said, this has been 15 years between Tron Legacy and Tron Ares. And, you know, we left the grid and we left Flynn and everything certain ways. And it just felt like what they did with Flynn and what they did with the grids and stuff, just like, how does this connect to Legacy almost at all? Like, where is the connection? Where is the story? And the stuff that they did do with Flynn, like, this kind of doesn't make sense, because, you know, Tron Legacy, we ended with kind of Flynn, quote unquote, sacrificing himself. He had his chance to get out with his son and Korra to get back to the real world, because he's been trapped in here. And it made sense how he was trapped for so long because of the rogue programs that were keeping him away, and he couldn't enter anywhere. And then this one, what they did with Flynn was like, he's got this and he hasn't left, but is this really Flynn? Is this a program? Is this, like, we don't know what it is. So like there was so many stuff that we had set up and left with Tron Legacy was pretty much ignored going into this. So someone who, if you're looking at this as a third in a trilogy, it just didn't tie together with that story of Tron Legacy. And I went back and revisited Tron Legacy with my oldest, who's really got into Tron. We watched both of them before we came to Ares, and she was really excited, and she loved Ares and everything else. But rewatching it, I really enjoyed what they did with it. And the story, it had its problems and stuff as well, but I think this one had more story issues because it started off strong and then it just kind of fell off into did you not really know how else you were going to try to do this type of feeling with the story?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for a ton of continuity there's not a ton of it, which is kind of problematic if you're presenting it in the same universe realm of the previous two films, and there's not a ton that connects them. There's very loose connections to it, so it kind of takes its own liberties, which I feel a little off put by that a little bit if I were to say, but the overall story was fine. I mean, you deal with, like you said, Ares, who is, kind of playing this program that's kind of rejecting his programming and discovering what he wants to do with a potential life that he could live. And that's kind of the central theme of, his journey throughout this whole film that, is kind of like you have two parallel stories. You have the intercompany, battle here between Dillinger and Incom. And you also got Ares on his journey too, who kind of plays a role in this because he is a Dillinger program who's kind of gone rogue, and it's kind of the catalyst for most of the conflict of this film, where they're basically trying to stop him. Mm-hmm. And it's a ton of fun, but like that's kind of where the depth of the story stops. So there's not a ton of it. Like you said, visual spectacle, check. Amazing soundtrack, check. Meaty story, not a check mark in my opinion. It's kind of an incomplete there because it's very loose, but I think they tried to focus so much more on the visual spectacle and the wow factor of the film that you're not diving as much into the meaty story development that you were kind of hoping for. Mm-hmm. And everything just kind of felt loosely connected to what had come before it, which is problematic if you're presenting it, like you said, as a third story to this overall story that you're trying to tell by calling it Tron. So you definitely missed on the connection part, which is a little disappointing, but like it's still overall a solid movie. It's just, if you're going at it, thinking about it like this, you're not getting this.
You can't go in expecting a deep, fulfilling story that takes everything from Tron and Tron Legacy and really runs with it. It lightly grazes it, but then so it almost feels like a reboot, but not a reboot because it does show so much stuff from the original Tron, but Tron Legacy is the one that they kind of like, well, we're going to kind of forget about that it exists a little bit. And that's what kind of just made it just feel so weird. And then, as you mentioned, they set up clearly for a fourth Tron film, but that's also problematic if you know the history of it because Tron 1, 1989, 21 years to get Tron Legacy. It's 15 years after Tron Legacy to get this. Is it going to be another 10, 15 years before we get a fourth Tron? Potentially we don't have Jeff Bridges anymore. So you had an opportunity in this one to finalize something with Flynn's story if you wanted to move on to something else outside of Flynn. And you just kind of dropped the ball on that. That's kind of what annoyed me most because it's been so long since Tron Legacy. And like, all right, at least give us some final closure on Flynn and move on from it and go do your own thing. Have AI, new program, something like that. But they just kind of dropped the ball of being able to give a conclusion to Flynn's story.
Yeah, and that's probably the most disappointing thing about it, I would say. He doesn't feel like he's very important overall to the story at all. Like, this is a very heavy Ares and Eve Kim story. Very heavily that, like 98% that film, and you get just a little touch of Jeff Bridges in this, which is a little disappointing. I don't know what his availability was for the film, but the fact that he's barely in it at all and is kind of treated like a side character, like just kind of a throwaway character. Like
it was. It felt like
you could have replaced his character with literally anything else, and it would have had the same impact on the story, which is a little disappointing because, like you said, we're presenting this as a third Tron film that's connected to the other two, but it is so loosely connected to that it almost feels like it's its own entity, which is okay if that's what you want going forward. But for those of us that like continuity in our storytelling, you got to close that loophole at some point. You gotta give some finality to that. And I really feel like they dropped the ball in getting us that. If you're kind of really going full bore away from it and kind of doing your own thing, it's fine to do, but tie up that loose end and give us that proper send off for that character to kind of like do your own thing. And I think if they were trying to do it, they failed miserably.
Mm-hmm. And like I said, Korra in Tron Legacy is this ISO. It's a being that's different than anything that had been created before. She ends up becoming the last one, but she's able to escape with Sam at the end of the movie, and you're kind of left with, all right, she's a human now. She's out in the real world. That's interesting. That's neat. But then you come into here where they're bringing characters out and they have the time limit and they have everything else. Like, there's nothing mentioned of the ISOs. There's nothing connected to that part of it. You bring in something completely different and new with the permanence and stuff, which you still tie back to Flynn, which, like, this guy was a video game creator. He was a hacker and software and stuff too, but you're still just putting so much onto his, well, he had this that he had created way back then, and he had this he created. Like, it's almost made him into this just otherworldly being. And like you said, you could have had anyone else do the Flynn cameo in this movie and it wouldn't have made a difference. Other than having it be Flynn ruined so much of that continuity that you had tried to establish between Tron and Tron Legacy. And that's my biggest problem with it. Like, I think the story of Ares, of this AI who is following commands as he's told, but as we know with most AI, it's learning and it's thinking and it's doing stuff. So it goes through Eve's files and it's kind of learning about human nature and it's seeing the good and the bad side of stuff. So he's kind of changing his thinking and his ideology of stuff, which happens kind of quickly as well in there, but you get that he's trying to evolve and change, and it's always changing. It's also the danger of AI, of just how you think you have control, of how you think you have this, but it can do whatever it wants in a completely different way, in multiple different ways. But then it just kind of, like, I don't know, it just didn't feel like it had that great of a payoff. But it was more me being annoyed at the fact of how they just kind of ignored Tron Legacy and just didn't give us anything solid with Flynn. Like, it would have been better just to leave him out of the movie than try to shoehorn him in like they did, because it just messed with so much stuff. Because we've gone into some spoilers. This is a big spoiler. He has a back door that he uses to help Ares out. But if he had that, why hasn't he left the grid?
Exactly.
Or where is he in the grid? Because we know there's something different about that Flynn. But it just made it messy.
It did. It made it very messy. And I'm holding out a sliver of hope that if they do this fourth film, you get that payoff. Mm-hmm. Because if you're just giving a little morsel of it here, you need to pay it off. Like, if you're doing it for the fourth film, like, this is how it's kind of, and we're going to dive more into it when we get to the fourth. Like, there's something happening in the grid now that could potentially make its way out into the real world as well. And there's going to be some type of major conflict. You got to have, Sam and Korra involved in this. And you got to have, like, there's got to be more of that involvement in the real world if that's where you're going with it, right? So we'll see what they do with the fourth film. I would be remiss if we didn't leave the review without me talking about one of my personal favorite, just highlight moments of the film. I was listening to Jared Leto talk about his love for certain bands and certain types of music. Because he is not only is he an actor, obviously, but he's a world famous traveled musician, and just kind of hear him, the way he talks about certain bands and his love for them in this film just made me chuckle just a little bit as a thing. Because he's this AI entity that are like, oh, you'd expect him to like, and they kind of poke fun at it a little bit. They're like, oh, I expected you to like this and this. He's like, well, you would think, but I love these guys because of X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, he's an AI that's obsessed with the 80s.
I love it. It's so funny. Like, just that little bit of personality that he really gets to show in this was written pretty well, and I enjoyed that little bit of it. It's not a ton in the film, but it's just a little nuances and stuff like that I appreciate. But it was fun listening to him to talk about why he loved Duran Duran, or you know what I mean?
And Depeche Mode.
And Depeche Mode especially was really
solved
really
a Rubik's Cube and other stuff like that.
It's kind of
there's some throwbacks to the 80s, but also, as him, a musician, as an actor. And it's one of those things, like, not going to go anything about his personal life or anything that's pending going on with that, say and have what you want on it with that. But you do get majority of the time when you have people who are actors who can sing, they want to shoehorn in them doing music. And I like that was the way they shoehorned in
here.
music with him, instead of having him sing or perform or something else like that. He's talking about as an AI, his love of Depeche Mode and other stuff like that. Like, because they're driving in the car and he's talking to Eve about stuff, and then he just goes into instantly naming the title of the song, and she's like, what did you just say to me? Oh no, Depeche Mode, like 1989 or whatever it was, and just go start talking about the song as they're zigzagging through traffic at breakneck speeds and stuff. He's just talking about his love for this song, and that was a fun moment.
It was fun. I got a lot of enjoyment out of that for sure.
Yeah, but this one was tough because, as we've mentioned, sound-wise, just Nine Inch Nails came in and was fantastic because they kind of blended a little bit of what Daft Punk did with Tron Legacy, along with the Nine Inch Nails sound that you know, to make it all fit and work within this kind of having classic sounds from the original Tron, blending stuff from Tron Legacy with the soundtrack, with all that. They knocked it out of the park. The visuals were great, beautiful to look at, and it was a spectacle to watch. It's just disappointing how they kind of dropped the ball with trying to tell an interconnected story while not connecting it to the story.
Yeah, I would agree with that wholeheartedly. There was so many more opportunities to kind of tie up some loose ends here, and maybe they do that with the fourth film. I don't know, but
will it take 20 years to get the fourth
I
film?
hope not. I mean, if they're already kind of teasing it, we don't really have that from any of the other two Tron films as kind of a teaser for what's to come. So you got to wonder if they're already working on
Hopefully
the fourth one. Hopefully, if they're teasing something coming, like. They're still yet to be determined whether they're going forward with a fourth film. I'm not expecting it to do commercially too well. The viewing in my theater was pretty sparse, not very heavily attended. Like, I think there may have been 25, 30 people in my movie theater when I went and saw it, which is very light. I'm hearing some mixed reviews on the actual film now that I've seen it. Kind of start looking. I don't look at reviews before I go see a movie. I'll kind of look at what the consensus is after it, and it still doesn't really affect my score when we do our grading, but it's definitely been a bit of a mixed bag as far as reviews go. I know some people who absolutely loved it, and some people were just like, kind of feeling about it the way we feel about it. So I'm interested to see how you grade it here.
Yeah, so Tron Ares was a visual spectacle. It looked gorgeous. The special effects were really well done. Just the style they shot it and the integrations of kind of that style that they started with Tron Legacy did carry over here, and they did, add on to that. Visually stunning. Audio, soundtrack-wise, Nine Inch Nails was fantastic. It was a lot of fun. But they did drop the ball at the story. There's so much that after 15 years, we were hoping to get some continuation on from Tron Legacy, but it almost ignores Tron Legacy, and what it does do with the story from the original Tron and Tron Legacy just felt like it just threw anything that they were trying to have connected out the window, because it just kind of ruined that integration, that connection between all of them. But it was a lot of fun to watch. If you turn your brain off to the story, you could have quite a lot of fun with it. I mean, it starts off pretty strong. It's that kind of second half where it falters a bit. I'm going to give this a 7.5 because visually and audio, it was stunning and spectacular. And me and my daughter had a ton of fun doing that immersive moving seat 3D for all of it. That made for such a fun theatrical experience that I can probably give it a little higher just because I had so much fun watching it, even if the story disappointed me.
Yeah, it's very interesting you landed on a 7.5. I'm giving it a 6.5 myself, and that's purely due to the visual spectacle and everything. I feel like the story was such a miss for me, as far as like expecting it to be a continuation of Tron Legacy and Tron before it. Like, it feels like it's kind of doing its own thing while kind of very loosely connecting it to what's come before it. I don't feel like that's necessarily the best choice to make when it comes to making a Tron film, to just kind of throw away, pun intended, the legacy that the previous two films have created in this world. But you said no issues with the sound or visuals. Those are phenomenal. Those make it kind of this spectacle experience that you really want out of a film. But due to kind of the lackluster story that came out of it, I have to knock it down significantly more. You could probably talk me to bumping it up to a 7. Basically, I think I'm being a little extra harsh on it, but I really, really was hoping for more of that connection to Tron Legacy at minimum, and it feels like it just took what Tron Legacy did and just forgot it existed in a lot of cases. And it feels like they got to the end of the movie before they finally realized, like, hey, we got to do something to talk about what, like, to deal with what happened here, because it's so very loosely connected to it up until, like, the last third of the film, where anything even remotely close to talking about Legacy gets involved in it. And that's a bit of a disappointment here for me. If you took out the fact that it was supposed to be connected, I'd probably score it a little bit higher. Like, it's fine as a standalone movie, but if you're presenting it as a continuation of something, they definitely missed the mark on that, and I have to be a little more critical of it.
Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree with what you had. Like, I was probably around a 7, but as I do, if I take my kids to it,
Sure, that's
and
fair.
they get a lot of enjoyment out of it, I give like an extra half point for
fair.
the kids, but it was also the experience that me and my daughter had together doing the motion and rumble seats that synced up to the movie with the 3D.
That's
like,
awesome.
It was a fun theatrical experience in that way that I would highly recommend doing, even if the story was lackluster. That made it such just kind of an experience to watch the film, and that gave the extra points for me to take it up from like around a 7 to 7.5, just because it was a fun experience to watch with my daughter, and she absolutely loved it. Because she's not, she's around teenage age, so she's not fully as in depth and worrying about the story aspects as we who grew up on the original and have been following this for 30 years to almost 40 years to, really care about where that story is. She's not as caring as much of that the second half fell off. So it got that extra points because of that from my daughter and our experience that we had watching it.
Totally fair, totally valid, right? Like, I would probably have given it a 7 had I gone and done the moving seat experience too. Like, it looked like that could have been a lot of fun. Like, I would have enjoyed the film more had I been moving around the entire time, with the cutscenes and the action and stuff that they do well. It's just so much of a miss in connecting that story in any type of way that really dragged down the overall score for me. If you're just giving it a score based on purely a criteria of visuals and sound, it's one of the better films we've seen in a while, just from that perspective, because visually it is cool as hell. Like, it just the visual effects were done spectacularly in this movie, and like you said, you have that darker, grittier visual aesthetic matched with a darker, grittier band like Nine Inch Nails, providing a soundtrack for it. It's a perfect marriage, in my opinion, for that. It definitely elevates the movie experience, having that connection to it. And if that weren't involved, I probably would have tanked the film even further. Like, it raises the level of the film that much for me, personally, because it does the visuals so well. The music's phenomenal in it to match the tone of the movie, which is so important, because you can throw great music into any film, and it may not always make sense. Like, this is a perfect marriage of that darker, grittier tone with a band like Nine Inch Nails, who are known for more of that darker, grittier sound, and you get that marriage so well done in this that really helps the film, in my opinion.
And if you're a fan of Nine Inch Nails like we are before, this film, we've been fans for a long time, look in the film. There might be a special cameo waiting for you in there if you're a fan of the band, which was kind of a nice touch and stuff to see in that. But yeah, like, most of with this, which is kind of a bit different from like the other scores I've given to movies, is based mostly on the experience and less about the story. And I'm pretty big on story and stuff. And like, it got a little bit higher because of that immersive experience of the seats in the 3D and the visuals and the sound. Like, I was able to give it more of the turn your brain off and go watch this movie and not worry about the story. And you're going to have a fun time because of the visual spectacle and the audio, and go see it. And if you have the 40X or the, D-box seats or something like that, this is one that I think is worth that extra money to have that kind of experience for it, because it made it so much more where I was annoyed by the shortfalls of the story, but that helped me kind of not care as much. Like, probably on a second viewing at home, I'm going to be much more critical on the story, because it starts off pretty solid. It just really drops the ball around the like 60% mark of the film, and you have some, like, I was looking forward to a few actors that are in here and thought they had bigger roles, and they were in there for like 30 seconds.
Not much involvement of it at all. But, it is the film that we got. And that's kind of an interesting thing to pay attention to moving forward with, especially these types of films. If you get to go having that more immersive experience, how much does it enhance your enjoyment? And are you willing to be more forgiving of a little bit of a lackluster story if the experience is heightened because you get to have that immersive experience? It absolutely plays a part in grading films. Like you said, if you have a much more in-depth experience watching a movie, does it enhance the film for you? Does it take away from it? Is there one where they don't do it as well? And it's just like, I was so distracted by this, I couldn't pay attention to the film as much as I wanted to. Because that's very much a possibility as well, because like you said, those seats exist for every film and they sell them for every movie. Are you trying to sit in that for like a romantic comedy? Does that really help you like with the film, or is it so distracting? You're like, I could only focus on what the heck was happening because my seats were moving.
Like they had it for one battle after another, which we really enjoyed the film. Go back and see what we thought of it, but I couldn't
imagine.
Think of anything in that film that other than 30 seconds here, 30 seconds there, 30 seconds there would make it worth, that type of seats. Stuff like Avatar with Tron, with superhero movies, those are the ones that really make that type of immersive experience more, because I had never done it before. We took the kids for the first time and did it with Bad Guys 2, which was okay. It was kind of mediocre because it had some action stuff in it, but it didn't really that was fun. But I want to see something that actually makes it worth the cost, and Tron Ares was one that made it worth the cost to me.
That's awesome. But Tron Ares is in theaters now. Go check it out. Go see it in the enhanced experience if you can, if you have that option available to you. Really think it would help your enjoyment of this film. But yeah, if you've seen it, come to our social media pages, come to our YouTube comments, come to our Discord, talk to us about the film in there. We'd love to talk about it with you. And if we're missing the mark, if we're overlooking something, let us know. But I think we're pretty spot on in our evaluation of this one for sure, because it's definitely one that I really wish could have been done a little bit better story-wise. But yeah, it was still a fun experience. Like you said, the visuals and music in this were top-notch.
Yeah, we can definitely see why it can be polarizing between the reviewers and the critics and stuff, because of just kind of how messy the story ends up being, because it starts off so promising.
For sure. It's definitely one that I'm interested to see how I feel about it if I watch it again.
We are now partnered with Dubby Energy. Dubby is a clean energy drink to give you focus with no crash or jitters like other energy drinks.
Dubby contains vitamins, amino acids, and 150 milligrams of caffeine. It also features 0 calories, no sugar, no fillers, and no artificial dyes.
From Dragonade and S'mores to Push and Punch and Galaxy Grenade, Dubby has a wide range of flavors for you to choose from.
Use code WBTP to save 10% off your Dubby Energy orders, and look for a direct link in the audio and video descriptions.
So moving on to our second film review of the week, we have Roofman, which is based on a true story. Now, this movie actually made me want to look up, because it was so absurd and crazy about what happened, of exactly kind of what they've changed. They've romanticized some more stuff, and they changed a lot of it, but it's a pretty wild true story, and it's based around Jeffrey Manchester. He, in, around North Carolina, 1998 to 2004 is kind of the time period for this. He was robbing McDonald's by breaking into the roofs. He robbed 40 to 60 of them. He would climb up on the roof late at night, bust a hole in the roof, and jump down in and wait for the morning crew to come up. And he'd have them, empty safes and cash registers and steal all the money for that. Well, he eventually ends up getting captured from that, because he was known as the good guy robber, and it something that actually did happen in true life, that he was putting him in the freezer, and one of the guys didn't have a jacket, so he gave him his jacket and stuff. So he kind of got that, even though he was breaking the law and robbing these McDonald's and stuff, he was being a nice guy about it. Like, he wasn't trying to be too violent with it, and he was giving jackets to employees so that they wouldn't get cold and stuff. But he ends up getting arrested for it. But he stages a breakout, and when he breaks out, he finds his way into a Toys R Us and manages to live in a Toys R Us for over 6 months while everybody is looking for him. Like, he didn't leave the area. He was just hiding out in a Toys R Us, and it was just so wild that actually happened in real life, that he hid out in a Toys R Us for so long.
It's definitely it's a wild story, right? So obviously with this, they have to romanticize it up a little bit. But yeah, Channing Tatum here plays Jeffrey Manchester. He's, the guy doing these robberies, and it's an absurd premise, but you talk about like his background as, a soldier who, only knows how to be a soldier. And it talks a little bit about like these guys struggling to kind of fit back into quote unquote normal society when they're done being in the military. And he's this guy who, has a young daughter and two young twin boys. I believe they were boys. I can't remember, but two young twin children and babies, literally. And he's trying to give them this good life, especially his daughter. So you have, him not really giving his daughter the best birthday gift. Like he's not really a great gift giver, and you can kind of see the disappointment there, and it leads him to kind of making this decision, like, what can I do with my life to kind of give them a better life? And, talking with, his friend Steve, who is, also former military friend of his who does some shady dealings on the sides, making like new identities for people, played wonderfully by Lakeith Stanfield, who's a phenomenal actor. I'm liking seeing him in more and more things now, and seeing his career kind of really take off and getting more opportunities here. Kind of points him in a direction of like, just focus on what you're good at. And one of the things he was notoriously good for was being very observant of his surroundings, like knowing and assessing situations and circumstances and understanding systems and how things operate, and being able to really identify those types of things, really lean to it. And obviously he lands on, well, what's a quick way I can make money? And his mind automatically goes into a criminal element of robbing these McDonald's. And he's like, well, this is easy. I know every McDonald's probably follows the same procedure, right? If they all operate as a corporate entity, like these are the things they do. And he goes and starts robbing these McDonald's until he, in a very funny moment, gets to the point where he's leaving the dude the jacket, and eventually gets caught. Like he has the cops show up to his house. Like he eventually gets caught, and
in the middle of his daughter's birthday party, where he finally gets her the bike that she's
gets
always
her the bike
wanted.
that she wanted, because he had enough money to do so. And he's got this really nice house, and his buddy's kind of giving him the side eye, like, you're not doing this on the up and up, are you? Because, game recognized game. I do some nefarious stuff too. There's no way you could have afforded this nice of a house this quickly, right? Mm-hmm. And, it leads to him going to jail and breaking out and getting to that Toys R Us and finding the Toys R Us, which is a fun way of him getting in and setting up his shop in Toys R Us. And then eventually he meets, one of the workers there. Well, observes one of the workers there. Her name is Lee, played by Kirsten Dunst, who, is also the central figure, the love interest for Channing Tatum in this story, where the guy just can't help himself, man. He's just, he's a guy who just has to interfere, and he's getting distracted while also trying to hide. And it's a weird, really interesting dynamic of how they play that story of him, like, not being so, I know I'll get into it because I want to let you talk a little bit more about it, but there's some issues I have with some of just the believability of some things in this story that I'll touch on later, but it's kind of the kickoff for the rest of the story, is him observing Lee and trying to get to know her a little bit better.
Yeah, there's a running joke that he is the smartest dumb guy that you could ever meet. And as the film goes on, as you see these different situations and stuff, you realize that's not just an attack on him or something. It's the truth. Like he's a smart, very observing guy, but he makes a lot of dumb decisions and stuff. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's wild. Like a lot of it I looked up, like he really did set up the baby monitors to monitor stuff around the Toys R Us, and that he hid out in different parts. And there's some things, like there's actually a Circuit City that was involved in real life, which I didn't go into that one, but they did keep the aesthetic, because it is, mostly set around 2004 after he escaped, that he's kind of waiting around, that his buddy took a 6-month job or something. He was supposed to be available for him to get him the passports and everything to leave, and he had to wait like a month, and then his buddy went off, so he had to wait another like 5 months, and he had to wait till December. So you have him trying to figure out how to survive and live within this Toys R Us during that time. And it gets ridiculous. Time, you definitely upped the craziness of it. You do have Peter Dinklage as Mitch, the manager of Toys R Us, he's always just so fun and entertaining about it. This guy who just, I am a manager of this store. I care nothing but about this store, not about the people. You're going to work the schedule. You're going to work. I don't give toys away for free for your toy drive. I am the manager. This is me. And like, And he plays that really well. But I'll say Kirsten Dunst was really good as Lee because she brought a lot of heart and emotion. There was a lot more heart in this movie than I was expecting, too. Like, Channing Tatum was very charming and handles the character very well. There are some ridiculous situations that he gets himself in and stuff, but Kirsten Dunst plays really well off of him. I think they played really well off of each other, that their kind of quick romance was believable, but there was a lot of heart and soul and play between those two characters that really carried this film to me, really entertaining, even though it does have some faults and flaws, that it felt like it was a really enjoyable, wild, wacky, crazy type of story. Like it's a unique type of film because I've never really seen anything like this that's based off a true story. Like, some of the absurdities actually did happen, while others were, added to the film to, be a little crazy and over the top. But I think Channing and Kirsten all did a really great job in this movie. And it was a lot of fun to see. Like, there's a part of the film where it gets that he drops toys off for Lee's toy drive at the church she belongs to, but he gets hooked to be brought in and everything. And you get to see Ben Mendelsohn as the pastor, and just seeing him after everything you've seen him in the darker, more serious roles, to see him as a singing, over the top Southern preacher man, which that was just a lot of fun to see Ben doing something like that.
It's so not what we're used to seeing. I didn't even know he was going to be in the film, honestly, because I didn't do a ton of research about it going into it. But when he showed up, you and I both gave each other a look like, oh my God, he's in this film and he's this is so anti what because he's so notorious for playing a really good villain that you just want to hate. And he's just this nice, aw shucks, like Southern preacher man that just wants to get people to come to his church. And his wife is played by Izo Aduba, who plays Eileen in this. And you obviously know her from Orange is the New Black is what she's most famous for, I would say. But just having those two in this film was just a fun little bit of levity from, what was going on. My biggest issue with this movie, and it I don't know why it was such a hard thing for me to get past. When I alluded to it a little bit earlier, was about the believability of it. They show so much of him being mentioned on the news over and over and over again at the beginning of this movie that it felt like such a throwaway, like, oh, it's just a matter of time before people stop caring because he was gone and missing for so long that the news stopped covering him. He's interacting with several people in this movie, none of whom knows and remembers who he was and who he could have been. Like, none of them. Like, he just comes out and says, oh, my name is John Zorn, and everybody just kind of takes it as face value. Like, the dude was on the news every day for months, and you're telling me that nobody could have been like, hey, aren't you?
And he didn't really change his look. He's got this pencil-thin goatee that he never shaves or changes.
There's nothing distinguishable about the mugshot compared to what he looks like now. And he even has interactions with people who are in law enforcement, and none of them are clocking like, hey, this is that notorious roof bandit that escaped from prison. You would think people would like catch the second he went out in public and showed his face to somebody. Like, that's the part of me that I feel like I had such a hard time getting over in this film. Like, he's just out and about, oh shucks, I'm meeting this lady. I can believe some people because there's a ton of people that just flat out don't watch the news. A lot of times I'm guilty about being it myself. I try to keep up as best I can, but I'm not a religious news watcher. But the fact that nobody, not even somebody in potentially law enforcement, could have seen him and have been like, I know I've seen your face somewhere, and you can go and double it. Like, for some reason, it just lacked the believability for me. And it was a hard thing for me to get over during the film, but overall it does have a lot of heart to it. There's a lot of like that part of the story is done very, very well in here. And I was very surprised about it. I enjoyed the movie a lot more than I was expecting to going into it. Cause I was just like, this film could probably just be all right, but I got a lot of enjoyment out of it. It was entertaining. The stuff they needed to play up, they did really well to kind of tie everything together. I had a fun time watching it.
You see, I didn't have as big a problem with the believability of it as you did because, I mean, thinking about the time, 2004, we've still got flip phones. We don't really have smartphones. You don't have the the internet is still big, but it's not like what it is today. So people aren't
Sure.
looking at pictures all the time. But it's more because after the film, I read his story and looked up the real, and it is as ridiculous as this kind of movie was. Like it, as you said, it added more craziness and more romanticizing and other stuff, and they changed details and everything else. But the real life version of this was as ridiculous. He was able to, live in that Toys R Us from his 6 months, and he did start going out in the community and dating a woman and going out and kind of testing the limits and stuff, and nobody recognized him. So it was that point that because I read it up on it, he was able to do a lot of the stuff that they showed in there, which does feel a bit unbelievable, but because I read of his true story, I didn't have as big of issue because I'm like, it sounds ridiculous and it looks ridiculous that no one ever noticed him because, I'll get into a slight spoiler bit here, is that the ending, while very fitting for the film, is not how it actually happened in real life, because it's even more ironic and even crazier because in real life, he ended up moving into an abandoned Circuit City and lived in that while the Christmas rush and stuff was going on. And he was busted because they found a fingerprint on a DVD of Catch Me If You Can. That's how he was arrested in real life.
So funny.
You would, if they put that in the movie, you thought that would have been absolutely absurd, ridiculous way to try to end. That's how it actually happened in real life. Like
So
they went
funny.
for a more dramatic, heartfelt, gripping type of ending to the movie. But in real life, he moved into a Circuit City and got busted because of Catch Me If You Can. If you don't know the movie Catch Me If You Can, it's about an infamous, Leonardo DiCaprio character.
Such a good movie.
That gets busted and arrested for all the crimes and stuff he's committed, and he gets arrested and found out because his fingerprint was found on the DVD. That was wild and strange. So because I read about it and saw all how ludicrous the real story about him was, it feeling ridiculous that no one noticed him in the movie didn't bother me because I knew that's what happened.
I can see why they made this a movie because it's just such a wild story. But I didn't know that. Like I said, I didn't look up like what actually happened to the guy. But that's crazy and hilarious. That the one thing that brought him down was Catch Me If You Can, which on name alone is hilarious. But yeah, I mean, it's a very entertaining movie. I really enjoyed it. It's a very breezy watch. It's about a 2-hour movie and it's paced very well. It's not very slow. Mm-hmm. It talks about, a lot of the stuff he does in the Toys R Us is very funny, and you can kind of see him, as you can imagine he would, kind of losing his mind a little bit without human interaction, without, what have you. And some of the stuff he does in the Toys R Us are very funny. My favorite scene in the entire film that I want to give some light to, it's just so funny and so silly, is like his first night in Toys R Us, where the cameras are still on, because a little bit of a spoiler, he bugs the cameras to not record. Like he winds up reading the manual and turning off the recording option, and nobody notices because the cameras still work. They just assume they're recording when they're not, which plays out in a very funny way later in the film. But he's kind of like using some of his military-esque training to not be caught and observed and filmed and be sneaky, and he's trying to avoid all these cameras. And he gets to the point where he comes across the bag of peanut M&Ms that he's just like starving. He really wants it. He's trying to grab him with the toy grabber, and they're just out of the reach of it. And you see the funny just shot of the security camera with just the grabber trying to grab at it, and it's just not working. I don't know why. Yeah. It made me laugh, like just watching it, because it just looks so absurd. But that was one of the funnier scenes in the movie for me, was just that absurd, him trying to avoid Toys R Us security cameras and using a grabber to grab just a bag of peanut M&Ms because he was hungry.
I also enjoyed him taking his aggression out on Tickle Me Elmo.
That was also funny.
If you grew up in that time, you know how huge that toy. Like, it was great for our generation. It made it feel like it was a, film, the way it looked, the way it was filmed, everything around it. Like, bringing us back to the late 90s, early 2000s era with stuff, and bringing those toys. Like, they recreated a Toys R Us, because there are some that have reopened, but pretty much it's a dead brand. It was for a while there before they started bringing it back, but it was a huge part of our childhood, and seeing all those old toys coming back and stuff. But him just getting so mad and beating the crap out of the Tickle Me Elmos while Elmo's just laughing at him about it was such an entertaining bit. But I think this was a great vehicle for Channing Tatum. Like, he's kind of had a really good career resurgence over the last. I mean, he's got to finally play Gambit after so long of wanting to play him in Deadpool and Wolverine. He's getting to be in an Avengers film. He's going to be in Doomsday. And you've got all these other little films that he's been coming out and doing that's really showing that he's a much better actor than a lot of people were giving credit for. I think he's really charming. He handles the humor really well. He handles the emotion and the heartache. We both busted out laughing. We saw him in his Halloween costume when he shows up to Lee and
So funny.
all that. But he brings a lot of heart and emotion to this guy because you feel, he's a guy who's done a lot of crime, but you feel sympathetic to him because you know that he's struggling. There's a lot of people out there like that in the world who, especially like military people, who don't know where they belong, don't know how to do civilian life. And he's one that just, I'm smart in some ways and dumb in a lot of others. Like, I don't know how to apply myself to the real world and do this. And you feel sorry for him because he's trying to do the right things at times, but he keeps making a lot of wrong decisions, which he realizes is wrong afterwards, but he keeps doing them. And there's so many people that we know and can see in real life who continue to do that. Like, the right thing to do. You're a good person outside of this, but you keep making all those wrong decisions, and you feel really sympathetic towards him. And Channing Tatum plays that really well to where you do get that sympathy for him because you feel bad for him, even though he's a criminal on the run. You're feeling bad for him because of the situation that we know he put himself in, but you feel bad that he had to go to this sort of life to live a life.
Yeah, it's always one of those things. It's a fascinating human element, right? So you have so many people who struggle that how many people who struggle think about, well, the easy thing to do would be, what if I robbed a bank? That would solve all my money problems. Or what if I, you know what I mean? Like, and and very, 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 very few people act on that impulse. And that's what's so fascinating about him as a character is there's no filter there. Like, he just went and did it. And then he was just like, yeah, I did it. But I was just like, he doesn't think about why it was the wrong choice to make. You know what I mean? It's just like, that's what makes him so fascinating as a character is that he doesn't have that moral filter at the time, like, oh, it's okay, like, because I'm doing it for the right reasons, and he feels justified in doing it, which is very much like wrong, obviously, but it's done in such a way that you kind of empathize with him, and you kind of like, you're like, I get it, I get where you're coming from, you're struggling, and this was apparently the only outlet for you because you're taking the one thing you're really good at doing and trying to improve your life, but not having the right guidance too. And there's like so many deeper things to it, but it's definitely a fascinating human case like that because so many people like think about those things and crosses their mind, but nobody really acts on it. And this is somebody that very much did and went that route, and you see what's going on, and you kind of see yourself in them a little bit. And I think that's what they did a really good job of bringing it across because you get it. Like, I get it, man. I get the struggle. I get the financial struggles, and you feel like you've got no other place to turn, no hope for your future. What are you going to do about it? And that's the route he went. And I love what Steve, Lakeith Stanfield says to Channing Tatum later in the movie. He's like, "You were the smartest dumb guy I know."
And I said that ran all the way throughout the
it was
movie.
The central theme of the movie is just like,
it's true.
Like, you were the smartest dumb guy I know because the things that he was doing are very ingenious and very smart, like smart criminal. Dumb human being. You know what I mean? It's just like he gets it, and it was tragic that he couldn't take those skills and apply them for all good things, but that's what makes it such an interesting character and what it made for a great story. Like, I really enjoyed the story they told in this. This is a really, really well done movie. It's kind of a sleeper. I don't know how well it's going to do commercially at the box office, but I got a lot of enjoyment about this. I want to watch it again. Like, this was a good movie. I got a lot of enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, I would implore you to do what I did, like go read up on his story and what happened in real life and then rewatch a movie, because I don't think the ridiculousness of people not recognizing will bother you as much after you read how ridiculous he got away with everything with it. But yeah, like you said, we empathize with him so much, but you also felt bad with him in the end because as we get towards the end, he's finally deciding that, all right, I need to get out and go to somewhere where they can't catch me and can't find me. And he goes back to Steve, his friend, his military buddy that does all the passports and IDs and everything else, expecting that he's going to be my gateway out of here. And then Steve's like, it's going to cost you like 50 grand for me to do this. And he's like, you told me when, before I went to jail, you were doing this for like 5 grand. And now you're telling me, your friend, that it's going to be 50. And you felt for him in that moment because even like his quote unquote friend Steve is screwing him over and making him pay all of this amount because he knows how desperate it is. So he's like even screwing him over. So he has to go back and do more dumb things to make things right. And it just like a guy that you sympathize, like even though he's a criminal, you sympathize that he tried, but he just kept getting screwed over in every different way. And it's a really interesting study on human nature and just how some people are and how they think. And like, so yeah, that running joke throughout the entire movie that he's the smartest dumb guy you ever meet is absolutely true. As you see everything he gets himself in, when you read up on the true nature of everything he did, like he is a smart, dumb guy because he just kept doing the wrong thing. And we didn't even touch it. Like Lee has 2 kids and he has, a daughter and 2 boys, but when he went to jail, she cut off because his first jail sentence was like 45 years in that. So, I mean, I think he was like 27-ish when he got in there. So you're talking that he's going to be 70s. A 70-year-old man before he can get out unless they, give him parole at some point. And they give him another sentence later on with stuff, but you felt bad for the guy, even though he put himself in this situation. Like it's this weird thing. Like you feel bad for him, even though, it's 100% his fault. Everything that happened, even his arrest and everything else was 100% his fault.
Absolutely. And it's like sympathy, but no sympathy, right? Mm-hmm. It's a hard thing. It's a hard thing to talk about, but man, like I really enjoyed this movie.
I did too.
It was really good. It was really fun, but Roofman is a wonderful tale about just the smartest dumb criminal you're ever going to meet in Jeffrey Manchester, played brilliantly by Channing Tatum. One of my favorite roles he's done in recent memory. Like he is really, really good in this movie. Kirsten Dunst as Lee is just phenomenal on-screen chemistry with Channing Tatum as well. This is a sleeper hit for me that I really got a lot of enjoyment out of. It's a heartwarming story about a guy who just can't seem to make the right decisions at the worst possible times in his life, and just leads to this all these criminal, theft acts that he performs. But it's told in such a charming way that you really pull for the guy. And even towards the end, like, he's doing bad things, but you still want to cheer for him to succeed and make it out and just everything to be okay. And, it plays out. And go check out the guy's story. From what Brad was telling me, his story was insane. But for that reason, man, I'm giving this film a solid 8. I really got a lot of enjoyment out of this film. A few things about it, just like for the believability without knowing his story kind of tampers my enjoyment of it just a little bit. It's not a perfect film by any means, but it was really fun and really well done. Like, this is a movie I want to see again, and for that reason, I'm giving it a solid 8.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised, but I'm glad you gave it an 8 because I thought we were going to be a little farther apart. I'm at an 8.5 because I really enjoyed it, because I did look it up and know how ridiculous the real life was, so the ridiculousness in the movie didn't, affect me like it did with you. But yeah, Channing Tatum, this was a great role for him to show off his comedic, but also more of the heartwarming and touching. And yeah, Kirsten Dunst was such a great addition to that character, to be able to bring that heart and the soul and the emotion, because she's not knowing what's going on is trying to help him be a good man and be this and that, but he just can't stop getting in his own way with everything. But it was a great vehicle for both of them. Like, 2 really good, solid performances. Visually, it looks like it was made in the late 90s, early 2000s, so it fits the aesthetic and the style with them, rebuilding some of the old stores, the Toys R Us and everything. Really kind of brought back a lot of memories for our childhood and stuff. But it's a wild and crazy story that is well worth seeing and checking out. And it was just a really enjoyable film. It's a unique type of film that deserves to be seen.
For sure. The story is a lot of fun. The cast is really slept on too. Like, it's low-key got a really, really solid cast. We didn't even get into a ton of the other people that are in the film. Like you said, Ben Mendelsohn is just hilarious as this preacher pastor Ron. You've got Juno Temple making an appearance for fans of Ted Lasso that she's probably most famous for. She's in the film a little bit briefly. Also, very briefly, you have Tony Rovalowy, who is, most people would probably know him as playing Flash in the Spider-Man films, the new Spider-Man films.
And from Scream.
And from Scream, obviously, but, probably most for...
Yeah, mostly for Flash, because he was in one Scream movie.
Right, and very briefly, spoiler. But yeah, he makes a brief appearance as the guy who gets the jacket from Channing Tatum. You've seen it in the trailer. I'm not really hiding that from you there. But yeah, just a really solid cast overall in this film that, Peter Dinklage as well. He's just, I love seeing him in everything.
He's just so much fun being the grumpy old man.
Yeah, and he does it so well, so brilliantly. But definitely a film worth seeing and checking out. It's definitely one that I'm going to be checking out again because I really like the movie. Believability aside, it's one of those things that kind of irked me while watching it, but it didn't hamper my enjoyment of the film. Yeah. It's just like, okay, if I can get past the fact that he really could hide out for this long and nobody knows who he is. But then again, like you said, it's a time period, it's early 2000s where not everything is as online as it is now. But it would probably be significantly harder for him to do that now. The one thing I wanted to say about him is, why the hell didn't he get out of the area? Go somewhere, if you wanted to set up shop a state away, if you went to South Carolina or Virginia and done the exact same thing, he probably could have gotten away with it at that point. But he, once again, made the dumb decision to not leave the area. He had many opportunities
to leave and do something, and just being the smartest dumb guy, he just made all the wrong decisions.
Coming full circle. Get out of the region, my guy. Go far, far away and start over. You'll probably be more successful, but it is what it is.
Yeah, so Roofman is in theaters now. We highly checking out. It is a much smaller, especially compared to Tron Ares and stuff, but it's got such heart, warmth, and humor, and it's just a wild story that it's hard to believe, but a lot of it did happen. Again, they changed a lot of stuff up to romanticize it and dramatize it and everything else, but it's a fun, really interesting story that you feel sympathetic, but you're just a dumb guy. Why are you doing this stuff to yourself? You almost want to yell at the screen, which don't do it, but you almost want to yell at the guy, just stop. Just get out, leave it. Why are you leaving the toys? No, get back inside. Stop doing that kind of stuff, because you felt sorry for him, but at the same time, you're dumb. Don't do that. That's going to get you caught.
It's just so silly, the fact that he just didn't leave the area. It was just I get it, your family's there, and you want to, see your girl and, see all that, and then you fall in love with this girl, but it's just man, just what could have been. You could have fallen in love anywhere else. But, it wouldn't have made for as interesting a story, I'm assuming. But, yeah, just well done. Well done with that movie. I really got a lot of enjoyment out of it. I wound up liking it way more than I thought I would. I was just kind of expecting it to go in and just be okay, but I got a lot of enjoyment out of it. It's easily, in my opinion, of the two movies, overall, quality-wise, better movie of the week for me. And we'll see how it does.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to look at the two because, Tron Ares, we've got the visual splendor and the audio splendor. It's just gorgeous to look at. And then we have a much smaller film that's grittier, looking like it was filmed in the 90s and early 2000s, but it has so much more heart and depth and emotion to the story that it connects you so thoroughly to its story and carries you through it so well, while the other one kind of abandons its story to the end. So, one is a visual treat to see in theaters, while the other one, if you want more unique films like that to be made, you need to go out and see it, because not only is it a good movie, but it needs to be seen in theaters. So they're going to green light more of these because it's such a fun, entertaining, and it is one of Channing Tatum's best films that he's done. He really got to show a decent amount of range with things, but you got to get a lot of heart and emotion out of him. And I don't know who else could have really played this over the top type of real life guy with as much care and heart and his attention as Channing Tatum did.
It was just so much fun. It was worth it. Definitely a fun one to go check out. And in my opinion, it won the week, and definitely one I want to go back and check out again.
Yeah, if you want a visual insane splendor, go see Tron Ares. But if you want hard emotion and a good story, go see Roofman.
Yeah, a little bit of something for everybody this week.
And coming up next week, we have an interesting new film that we've seen the trailer quite a lot, but I'm hoping it lives up to it, because this is the first real comedy that Keanu Reeves has done since they rebooted Bill and Ted and brought that back. it's good fortune. Keanu Reeves is playing a budget angel that he's coming down to help someone who's having a really hard time and trying to show him that the rich, extravagant lifestyle isn't all that it's cracked up to be, but maybe it is for him. And you get some swaps, and you even get, Gabriel kind of falling down on his luck too. So it looks like it's going to be a really entertaining comedy. You just hope that we haven't seen the best bits in the trailer and the rest of the movie falls flat. For
sure. The trailer looks awesome. Seth Rogen, Aziz Ansari. It looks like it's a ton of fun. I'm excited to check that one out for sure. It looks great. I'm really excited to see that film and talk about it next week.
I still cackle at several lines from the trailer, especially with like Gabriel standing outside of like a diner smoking a cigarette and Seth Rogen's character's yelling at him. I was like, leave me alone. It's all I've got. And like the way he delivers it and says it, because he does comedy really well, but he's been doing the John Wicks and the Matrixes and other action stuff, playing more kind of serious roles. It's really fun to see him back in a comedy.
I'm definitely looking forward to it. I can't wait.
We're also going to be reviewing season 2 of Peacemaker. So this was definitely an interesting season of trying to figure out how do we go from this being in the other DCU into the new DCEU connected to Superman and everything that they're doing going forward and stuff. So it was an interesting way they try to do that, and it's kind of a big shift in between season 1 and season 2 tonally about the emotional impact and the story that they're trying to tell. Like it was a very intriguing season, and I'm really looking forward to talking about that. I've still got the finale to watch, but it was an interesting season that's going to have plenty to talk about with that one.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely some implications moving forward with DC that we have to discuss if you're interested in the interconnected workings of how it's going to tie to other elements in the DC universe moving forward. And I'm excited to talk about that one. It's one of my sleeper favorite shows to watch every week, and the cast is just so good in that. And I'm excited to talk about season 2 and how it's very, very different from season 1 and what could be the future of these characters in the DCU moving forward. So excited to talk about that one.
And a very interesting follow-up to Superman to have this be the very next project, because it can get very adult in a lot of what it does. But that's all we have for you this week. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.
To find all of the episodes of We'll Bring the Popcorn, go to our YouTube page, hit the like and subscription button so you're getting our episodes when they drop each and every Monday. If you're listening to us in the audio realm on any of the podcasting platforms that we're on, please don't forget to give us a 5-star review. It really helps elevate the profile of the show. And don't forget to go to willbringthepopcorn.com, where it has all of our archive videos, all of our social media information, as well as our merch store, so you continue to support the show in that way. We cannot thank you enough for your continued support.